Hello, people of the internet. I'm currently working on uploading large files to Pulp, and it takes around an hour to finish the uploads. So I'm bored while waiting to see if my feature works correctly or not. So I thought maybe in the meantime we could work on something smaller. I found this RFE. It's not even a proper issue. It was just a question, and I like the question, and I like the feature that it proposes because I maintain some services that submit builds into Copr, mainly the Fedora review service, and it frequently happens that I forget to update the Copr API key, and then it expires and it fails to submit the builds properly, so there is an outage and so on. So what we can do is basically create a new API endpoint to not refresh the key, but because we probably want them to rotate, but we can create an API key to generate a new API key while destroying the old one. So we could do that, and we could implement this also on the Python Copr library side and use it by the Copr CLI tool. So basically we could do something like Copr CLI new key or something like that, and that would automatically generate a new key and update the Copr config, the Copr CLI config, and write the new key there. I think that would be nice. You could then run this via cron or something like that, for example, every month or so, and you would be golden. So I think let's do that. I think we can finish this within an hour, and then I can get back to testing my large uploads. Right, so let's move this to the very bottom because we are working on this, and let's jump to the command line. We should probably stash this change and check out main and pull new changes. Git checkout new branch, which would be API new key, for example. Now let's jump back to the editor and find the relevant code. So let's start on the front end side. That would mean something like API v3, I think general, maybe. So for example, we have what endpoints here? We have auth check, for example. So yeah, that's a general one. We also have, for example, packages specific endpoints, build specific endpoints, and so on. So there is nothing auth specific. The most auth specific endpoint is the auth check. So I would put it right into this file. All right. Once we finish our front end, then we are going to need to work on the Python library. So in the Copr project, it's the Python library, and there should be something called proxies. Proxies is not a good name. It was requested by my former colleague, and I didn't like it at the time, but I wanted to make him happy, so we went with proxies. But I would call it probably just resource or something like that. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. So in this directory, maybe is the init one. Check, yeah, the auth check is done in the base proxy. So maybe we can create the key one in the base proxy as well. We will see. At least for the original implementation, I think it would be fine. So let's find the last file that we are going to need, and that is going to be in the Copr project main CLI, probably. So this is the command line tool, and if we search for auth check, it isn't used here, auth check username. All right, so commands username. So if I do Copr CLI username, what does it say? Nothing. All right, so that doesn't really matter at this very moment. It is going to be in this file. Who am I? This is an action, for example. So who am I? I'm Frostix. So like this, we are going to implement a new action that is going to refresh the key. All right. So shall we start? We will do same as here, but it will be something like a new API key or generate API key or only API key. If we open the front end and go to the API keys, by the way, I didn't leak anything here because this is my local host, jokes on you. Then there is a generate new token. We call it generate new token all the time. So what if we do generate API token? Maybe new API token. Yeah, let's do new API token. It's shorter. Or maybe, yeah, let's do new API token. So this will, of course, take post. Or maybe, what if we do just API token? And post would mean create a new one, and we could theoretically do put, which would mean prolong the API token. Maybe, I don't know. Let's do API token. Let's do post to API token. If we take a look at, for example, builds, what our they say create. Yeah, let's not overthink this, right? let's do just API token, and that's good enough. It requires login, of course. This needs to be API token. Generate a new API token. And here we need to do something smart, which is what? So we can take a look what exactly our button, this button, do. So if we take a look, this should be something like API HTML. Yeah, right. Generate a new token. It goes to this endpoint. API underscore namespace new API token. API new API NS, probably somewhere around here. New token, right? So we should probably move the logic of this somewhere else. That would mean something like complex logic, or if we search for logic, we have API logic. API logic, sure. Are you sure? All right, that's as a good place as any. So we can take this function and get a new class here, for example, API logic, and put the function here. Now we of course need to change it a little. So we need self here. I think we don't need self. Usually, if we have, for example, Copr's logic, they are class methods. So we should do the same here, but it's not going to be a class method, but static method, because we don't need the CLS parameter here. We are not going to call any other functions from this class. So generate a new API token for the current user. That's too limiting. So let's do for a given user, and let's pass the user this way. So we define user here, we can delete this, and we can have it from the outside. Now, if we jump back to the API general, we import some fun stuff like base64 and so on. So we can take this and put it right here. What other are we missing? We are missing helpers. So helpers. We are also missing Flask. By the way, Flask current app. That's... I don't like that very much, but okay, let's not refactor this. So we are missing also datetime. I think Flask should be lower because it's not a built-in standard library. Now it does db session add and db session commit. I think in our logic classes, for example, Copr's logic, when we create something, we typically add it, but I think we don't commit. So we are going to add it, I want to API general, and we are going to not commit it, but add it only. So from Copr's import helpers and db, like this. So, of course, we are not going to redirect here because we want to do that in the I don't know if you call it a view or a controller or whatever, because everybody calls it something different based on the framework and language and so on. But we definitely don't want to redirect here on the very lowest level. So I think it would be fine to just return the user, or maybe return just the API key. But we cannot do just the API key because why? Because there are two values: the login, which is a hash, not the username, and token, which is a hash. So we need to return two values, so either a tuple or just the whole user object. I think the whole user object will be fine. And I don't like this name very much, API new token. Let's do just full explicit generate API token. Yeah, this is good enough. So I think here in our reminder, this is not the API endpoint. This is what happens when this button gets clicked. So here we can probably get the user and then put all of this away, and we can import the complex logic. So from Copr's logic, complex logic, import API, not complex logic, sorry, API logic, import API logic. And here we can do something like API logic dot generate new API token for a user, which is going to be this user. And I think it doesn't really make sense to redefine the user, so we can just flask g user and have it like this. So this automatically adds the user, the changed user to the database session. So we can, right after that, we can commit and redirect like we used to. So if we test this, I can kill the server, run the server again, I can refresh, and so if we take a look at our tokens, it expires at this date, and the login ends with UO, and this is a VO, a new token. Yeah, it definitely changes, right? So it works. If you don't believe me, we did any change. Like if I put the debugger there and click the button, we are in the debugger. So we are definitely running the new code, right? I do this, it changes MD. Next, it's not MD here. So yeah, it definitely works, the new version of our code. So, which means we can do the same exact thing in our API endpoint, which is API v3, API general, and this is our API token endpoint. So we can put something like this here, right? So the redirect is not going to be what we want to do. Let's just return empty dictionary for now. And let's maybe put a debugger here when we call it, so we can figure out what is going to be the return value. Now, this of course isn't defined, so we need to import the same thing. Right, so do we have any logic imports? We don't, so let's keep it here. Now, this, I see a lot of exclamation marks here. That's because we don't use these anymore. We moved the imports and the logic to a different file, so we can clear this up a little. Now, I think we have our endpoint correctly done. So we are going to work on this a little bit later once we trigger this out. So let's move to the Python library, and where we have our auth check, maybe let's skip to the Python library and work from the very other end. So we work on front end. Let's work from the command line. Let's meet in the middle. So in the command line here, I just realized there is a my camera on the right side, so maybe it will be a little bit complicated because you will not see the editor. All right, so what if we just kill the, yeah, I think you should see it fine now. So action who am I? Now let's copy this and let's create a new action. There is a new webhook secret, right? So maybe we can call it similarly. Maybe we can do new API key. For some reason the arguments wasn't used. I think it will be here. Now print username. I think let's just put the debugger here to see we triggered it, and let's work on that later. Now this is not good enough to define the function. We need to call it from somewhere. So where is, for example, this action called? Like like here. It's not called, but you can see it defines the function that should be called. So we should do something similar. So I think we can maybe copy this, put it right above, and call this parser new API key. And this is the same one, and this is the same one, right? The command line argument for it will be new API, and I just realized API key is not correct. New API token would be better. So parser new API token, same here, same here. The action that should be called. So action new API token, and we previously called it incorrectly also here. We called it API key, so let's do API token. So as you can see, the function is defined here and it is called from here. generate a new API token. Be careful, this destroys the old one. Because we don't have a table of tokens, that would be most reasonable to have a user, and for it have a table of valid API tokens. But from probably just only historical reasons, we have only one API token for a given user directly in the user database, not in a separate related database table, not database table. So we cannot create a new one while having the old one still active. We need to destroy the old one and replace it with the new one. So it's not ideal, but it could be improved in the future, but we don't have the capacity for that right now. So, right, this is of course incorrect in our case, because I wrote the help for argument called name, but we are not going to specify any names here. We are going to, we are going to generate the token for the current user, so no arguments. And which means we put it under project options. This is not a project option. Can we call this a general option? Maybe, not sure. For some reason the who am I is in the project option as well, but that's not correct. Either way, let's put it right here. So in the command line now, I could call Copr, give me a sec, I have a note here. How to run the Copr CLI with the development version of the CLI with the development version of the Python library. So basically this. And now we should be able to run the new API token, right? And we are in the breakpoint. So in this one, the next line will be print username, right? And exit. Good. So from here, we probably want to call the API endpoint through the Python library. So let's jump maybe here on the left side to the proxies, and we have the auth check here, and we have the auth username. Maybe we can create something like new API token and call it just generate a new API token. No reason to overthink this. Return munch, sure. So in our front end, the endpoint was called /API token. So what if we call just /API token self request sent? So we want to specify that this should be a method post, and I'm not sure how exactly we write it here. I think we do something like method post, but we import the post. I think we do it like this. If we should search for post, yeah, see method post. So where is the init? Here is the init. So we want method post, that's correct, and the import. So post like this. What's wrong here? Is it too long? Yeah, it's too long of a line. We want 80 characters max. So let's wrap this. Trailing comma as well. Right. Now we munchify the response and return it. Yeah, why not? Okay, let's keep it this way. So from the command line client, we want to use this method, which is going to be something like self client base proxy new API token. Okay, sounds reasonable. So let's store this to foo and let's get our breakpoint here. If we run this, API endpoint doesn't exist. So what did we mess up? Let's take a look here. So endpoint / API token method post. And I know what is wrong. I'm calling the Copr CLI, but I'm calling it without specifying my config. Therefore, it uses my production config, and we are trying to communicate with the production Copr instance, which of course doesn't have the endpoint. We only created it in our local environment. So here, let's specify config, which is going to be .config /copr.docker. This is my development instance. So now we are getting an error that the login is invalid or expired, which makes sense because we tried to regenerate it like 20 times already. So let's take this one, put it here, and let's run it again. And now we are in a breakpoint where in the new API token main.py. So we are here. We got through this, which doesn't look too good to me. So what's in foo? Let's take a look at our API v3 general. So I thought we would get stuck on this breakpoint in the front end, but we didn't. So I'm confused. What did we do incorrectly? Is it possible that I didn't restart the the front end once we created the endpoint. Yeah, that was the problem. All right, so everything was fine. I just forgot to restart the front end server. So now we are stuck in this breakpoint. We should have stored the value here. So if we do foo, what does this return? This should be a user. Foo is a user, and it has what? It has, if we take a look, it should have API login and API token. API token and API login, right? This is not the production one, I hope. So we should probably return a tuple with these two values. So this is going to be API token, which is going to be our user API token and API login, which is going to be our user API login. And I would like to probably format it a little like this. So if we comment out the trace, the breakpoint, we kill this, kill the server, start the server again. If we run this again, I think it should be a problem because, yeah, invalid token. But if we take our newest token and then run the command, now we got through and we are here. So what's in foo? Yep. So we have foo API login and API token like this. So we could do something like result and know that we have result API login and result API token, right? Token. So we can use these two. It would be fine. So I think we should have an option. We should, by default, print it to the command line. And we should have a parameter to say basically something like replace in the config. And that would automatically replace the values in the config, and therefore we wouldn't have to manually open the config file and replace that. So first of all, let's do if true, because we know there is going to be some condition afterward. And let's do print new API token was successfully generated. And we will do something like, if I open my config, it basically says token equals, oh good, it's the Docker one. I thought this is the production one. So it says login equals and token equals. So I think we can print it in the same format. And we can print something like login equals format, which is going to be our login, of course, and the same width. Is it token here? It's token. So token and token. So I think we can have something like this. Let's test this. So we can remove this part and we can run it again, which will be an error, of course. We will take the current one and run it. So new API token was successfully generated. Token login token. I think this is reasonable if you want to do it this way. Now we probably want to have a parameter which is going to be so something like this, and we will put it to our API. So parser new API token, and the argument is going to be called replace. That's, I think, good variant. And the action is going to be store true or false. So I think the action is store true, like this. Action equals store true. Yeah, that looks correct. I will probably maybe format it a little. Help. So replace the token, the login and token values in the Copr config, like this. Makes sense. So now we should be able to do the same. Of course, it returns error, but it didn't return error while calling the command, so this still works. And we should be able to do replace, which we cannot for some reason. So why we cannot? Parser new API token, we are adding an argument called replace, and here we have replace. So this is strange. I think neighbors are doing some weird noises again. I don't know what's happening there. So, and my music stopped. That's why I probably heard that. So I will put on some music and let's get back through this. So what the hell did we miss? So we have our replace and it should store true. I think it doesn't have to be like a replace, or does it? At maybe it has to be. Or oh, it probably has to be. Oh, sorry, I thought it was. Yeah. I thought it was given, but no, we probably defined a positional argument called replace, not created a new one called dash replace. Yep. I think sed has some, if we do sed dash I does the same thing approximately. How do they call it? Like, they call it like in place or something like that? In place. So should we do in place and I, basically, to be consistent with set terminology. What do you think? Maybe we could in place, which is also going to be -I. I think this is the correct syntax. Let's try this. So find again, unrecognized, sure, in place. Now we got through, and only -I still works. Good. So this is what we wanted. This is what we wanted. Let's go back to our action. And this is an ini file or a config file. So in Python, we definitely should be able to work with them. So ini or config, I don't see anything that could work with it, but our client definitely needs to read it. So if we go to our API client, this is this one, create from a config file. Config from file is defined in the helpers. So here we should have something like config parser, which reads the file which then returns the config. So can we use Pythons to dump to a file? Yes, you can. Thank you very much. So, okay. Now let's go back to our new token. A new API token to our function in the command line tool. And this is going to be, of course, if args in place. I think this is the correct one. So let's test this. If we change this again, yeah, we definitely need the in place variant because it's too annoying. So oh yeah, because we did the condition incorrectly. If it's in place, we want to replace it in the file. Now we only wanted to print it, so this won't work. Sure, the same issue. Right, put it here again. It works. So we can work on our else branch, which is going to use the config to dump. Now, I'm curious. We should probably, I'll put the debugger here so that we don't need to reset the key again. We should have something like self client config. Yep, this is the exact one. This is the exact one. So what if we but this is a dictionary, right? Or maybe Munch dict. Okay, this is a dictionary. So we need to create a config parser. I will do it like this. And we need to create the config parser. And we need to dump something. I want to use fp and fp. The path is going to be args config. Yep. So args config, and we want to create it for writing. This is empty though, so we need to fill it. Config default. Yeah, that's it. So we need to do basically config. Now, if you take a look here, it's Copr CLI. So we need to do this equals the dictionary. So instead of our dictionary manually created, it is going to be the self-client config, right? So if we put it right here and run the command, we got to the debugger. So let's quit and let's try to open this. So I think this changed because there is not the comment anymore, and for some reason there is connection attempts. So can I leave all of the config as is, only replace two values? This is not. Yeah, if you need to keep comments and formatting, use config updater package. That would be great, but is it dnf search python 3 config updater? Actually, it is in Fedora, so maybe we can use it. Should we? I think we should. It would be much better. So let's try this one. So we will import our. Okay, let's comment this out. Maybe it will be useful, maybe not. Oops, I didn't want that, sorry. So let's take this and do we want to read anything or not? Maybe we want. And we want to copy these and update. So our file is, as we already established, it's the args config. The values are going to be Copr CLI something, Copr CLI something, and the values are going to be a login and token, and our new values are going to be foo and bar. So, and update file. I would like to rename this variable to just config, and I would like to get rid of this, put the original one there, so that there is this config and everything. And if we run this, what happens? Config updater is not installed. All right, so for now, let's just do sudo dnf install config updater. What's the time, by the way? Oh yeah, we need to be slowly finishing the feature. So we installed this and we run this. Now the debugger is here, so we finished the updating. Let's open this. So the command is still here, and there is foo and bar. This looks really good. Okay, so I think we can get rid of this. We can move the config updater somewhere to the top. I have no idea where. Let's put it, for example, right here. Now, we want to do this only when we want to do the in place version. So move it like this. And we need our values. So our login value is going to be this, and our token value is going to be this. Update, and that's it. So what if we do new API token in place? Of course, the same problem as before. We will use the new one. Right. So in place, in place, in place, in place. So it either does nothing or it works perfectly. So if we refresh, there is a new one. If we refresh, there is a new one. So this works. And if we do without the -i, we got it here. It refreshed, but it shouldn't work anymore because it expired. So I think we finished the feature. Yep, I think we finished it. So one more thing we need to do is to specify the dependency. So client spec, there are dependencies here. We need to what did we DNF install? We installed this. No, sudo DNF install. We installed this. So we need to specify the dependency like this, and also as requires. So both runtime dependency and build time dependency. The other way around, runtime, build time. So I think this is correct. Let's commit all of this. So there is this white line change. We don't want that. So these two are fine. This looks fine. This looks fine too. This looks fine too. here is a commented out breakpoint. Here, that's not needed anymore. So like this is good, this is good, and this is good too. So maybe we should even create a documentation for this. Where is our documentation for cases like this? Maybe user documentation. If we go to docs Copr, our user documentation, and if we search for API, I do have API. Here is the Swagger UI, an API page. So is it possible we should put a button here explaining, or button like code block explaining how to do it via the command line? Let's not comment this out at the very moment. We can add the documentation later. That's no problem. So let's commit this. We use the prefixes of what packages was changed. So it's the front end, CLI, and Python, all of those. Add command add API endpoint for generating a new token, and it is going to fix, even though it is a discussion. I'm getting a phone call. Alright, so we have 2 minutes, then I have to run downstairs. So we are going to say it fixes this discussion, even though discussion can be fixed, but whatever. It fixes this discussion, and we should just push it. Like this, and create a new pull request out of it. We can remove the prefixes here. So add API endpoint for generating a new token. Everything is here. I think it looks reasonable. We will see what test says about that and what linter says about that. But yeah, that's it. All right, we managed it in exactly 1 hour. Nice. Thank you very much for watching, and see you later. Bye bye.